According to tradition, David lived in the 10th century BC, about 3,000 years ago. He's said to come from Bethlehem, the same village where 1,000 years later Jesus was born. The events of his life have become the stuff of legend.
When people think of David based on the Bible, the thing that leaps to mind is his battle with Goliath.
His crack troops are said to have crawled through an underground water system to take over Jerusalem and make it their capital.
One of the things that we remember most about David is that he was the character who brought together the northern part, called Israel, the southern part, called Judah, and firmly under his control united them into a single powerful state, the state of Israel.
His story is famous, but archaeologists have found little concrete evidence that David ever existed. If it weren't for the Bible, few would even know his name.
Without the Bible, we might not know that there was such a figure as David. We certainly wouldn't know the name and would know almost nothing about his life.
But that all changed in 1993, when an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Dan in northern Israel ended for that year. Gila Cook was the surveyor.
On that particular day, I had some measurements to finish off. I'd been working about an hour and a half, and then from the bottom of the hill came this booming voice saying, "Gila, time to go."
Gila packed her bags for the day and was coming down the hillside when she stopped to rest.
I finally get to this very low wall, and I dropped the stuff out of my left hand, and then I went like this as I put it down. And I looked again, and there was a stone that I really hadn't noticed before. And I do a double take.
On closer inspection, Gila found something remarkable.
And I said, "Oh, that's a kuf." One of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the Aramaic alphabet, one of the few that I can identify just like this. And so I knew that this was an inscription. I couldn't read it. I didn't know what it said, but inscriptions of this kind are very, very rare.
What Gila had found was one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the century.
The moment of finding this thing, it was phenomenal.
It was part of a monument recording a victory over the Israelites. It said the defeated king was from the house of David, a descendant of David's royal family.
Well, here we have Beit David, the house of David. And here we have Melech Yisrael, the king of Israel.
Critics have long claimed that the Bible's story of David is a legend, made up by Hebrew scribes. But for biblical scholar Steve Mackenzie, this inscription changes everything.
I think it's important as a way of indicating that the probability is that there was actually a figure named David. Now, it doesn't tell us anything about the details of his life, but it does kind of tip the scales in favor of David's historical existence.
But if a king called David did exist, what kind of man was he? The Bible portrays him as a shepherd boy who rose to become king of all Israel. A young warrior who made his name in combat with a giant. It's one of the most famous battles of all time. The young Israelite shepherd against Goliath, the champion of their sworn enemies, the Philistines. But how well does the biblical image match the historical reality? Military historians accept that one-to-one combat between warriors was a recognized battle tactic.
Single combat in ancient warfare was quite common, especially before two armies joined battle. Champions from one side would come forward, the heavyweight champion of X would go out and challenge the champion of Y.
The Philistine champion Goliath is described as heavily armoured, a claim that's consistent with the archaeological evidence. Ross Voss has spent the last 20 years excavating the Philistine city of Ashkelon in southern Palestine.
In our excavations, we actually found some fragments of scale armor, which gives us a perfect example of what this kind of protective element was like. And the scales we have here, for example, can show you that they're individual plates of metal with little holes that can be sewed on and overlap one another, that would then be sewed onto a leather jerkin or jacket to provide extra protection.
With all that armour, no wonder this confrontation has gone down in history as the ultimate mismatch. But now, there's evidence that David may not have been as vulnerable and inexperienced as the story suggests. David, the Bible says, refused to wear armour to battle. This would have allowed him to be more mobile than his opponent. Especially since Goliath's armour is thought to have weighed over 120 pounds.
David is wearing no armor. Goliath is weighed down under a ton of it. Goliath keeps saying to David, come on, come on, come on. Why does he keep saying, come on, get near, get near? Because David can't be caught. He is dancing around Goliath. He's uncatchable.
In fact, Goliath's size may have worked against him. He's described as a giant, a man about 9 or 10 feet tall. Now, modern medicine can explain that what may have caused Goliath's great height could have hidden a great weakness.
It's 2:30, please.
Chris Greener is one of the tallest men in Europe. He stands at more than 7.5 feet tall.
Cheers.
Thank you.
When I left primary school at the age of 10, I was taller than most of the teachers. I was certainly the tallest pupil, no two ways about it. When I left school, I was about 6'7", and 7 years later, when I was named tallest man in Britain, I was 7'5". So in 7 years, I grew 10 inches.
Doctors have a name for Chris's condition: acromegalic gigantism. Chris has travelled to Oxford to meet up with one of his former doctors.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Johnny.
How are you?
I'm well.
Really nice to see you.
It's been a few years, hasn't it?
Come in. Gigantism is excessive growth, and that is usually caused by a pituitary tumour where too much growth hormone is made, and this circulates in the blood and causes the bones to grow to an excessive length. Gigantism is very, very rare, and in the United Kingdom we have no accurate figures, but I would have thought there were a couple of handfuls of people who are giants.
Experts have been aware of the condition since the late 19th century, but they believe it's been around a lot longer.
I think it's been around since time immemorial, because we're going back a long way if we're talking about Goliath. Goliath's height will have almost certainly been a result of gigantism and a tumour making too much growth hormone. There's really nothing else that causes that degree of enormity.
In the Bible, Goliath's size gives him an unfair advantage over David. Doctors now believe that left untreated, gigantism can